Your general,
I just want to
go ahead.
make an addendum to what I've stated in terms of the key character of General Babangida. You did ask how I'm able to maneuver between uh, two senior officers who have had the opportunity of leading this country. One is senior to the other. The greatest trying period for me in my life, in their relationship, when there was a conflict. I don't know how it was engineered. And it went to the pages of newspaper. One calling the other a fool at 70 is a fool forever, and the other one responding. Honestly, I was close to tears. I went to Baba Atota. I said, sir, in my place, they said old dogs do not tear the mat. It is the small one that be trying their teeth on the mats. Why all this one? Go and meet your guy. Because that's the way he tells me. That he started it. So I took flight to Mina. Sir, what is happening? And I want to thank God that the two of them allowed me to meditate and settle that rift. So that's how I've been moving between them.
Tom.
Okay, I wasn't the problem. I was saying that this capacity and humility to learn, to want to learn, it used to be a lot of something that had always been with me over the years, including even, if you don't mind, including people like distinguished senator, the longest serving Senate president we have in this country, that this crop of officers, I hope they are still there in the army and the military, who ordinarily didn't go to university in the formal sense of it, other than their regular training. For people like IBB, my immediate boss then, late Admiral Ihumo, to have worked under or with people like Professor Boyade, Professor Zimiro, and got to grips with the economics of structural adjustment program. Elements in which regular students will spend 3 or 4 years to get a PhD from. It's amazing. And that's something you cannot take away, from the man. I normally admire him on that. I wish he's able to do so. Maybe Alhaji Mohammed and Her Excellency Aisha are able to convince him, because I had pressed and pressed for him to tell his own story by himself, not by other people telling the story. Many people, very brilliant works. Dr. Shidi Amuta is here. There are so many of them. Modern and so on. But we need to hear him tell his story. But he's done around it, tried to help, but it didn't quite work. It's amazing, this capacity. And that, for me, is the key for being what he is. May God continue to preserve and protect him, and we'll continue to remain as we are. In Jesus' name.
Sam, for the first time I'm hearing you calling the name of Jesus Christ. that is Orushana. Let me briefly, I've listened very, very carefully, and I just want to summarize in 5 or 6 key points. I think we should regard as the legacy of IBB, and one that we should try as much as possible to embrace, even under the difficult times that we are going through now. The first one is, I think, empathy. I think that has come out clearly, and I also experienced it. I had an accident in London in 1993. IBB called me, right? I was still in the hospital bed. I said, Adele, how are you doing? And he asked a number of questions, which I only can tell my friends. I can't tell them. But I told him I was still a man. The second one was when my mother died in 1992. He sent through a personal friend who was also close to him a message to the family, which we all appreciated, But I think the lesson for us, and I was listening to Engineer Iwayawu, that empathy, I think, comes out of a sense of solidarity with the human being as a human being. We are going through difficult times now when we draw lines of identity along ethnic lines, along religious lines. Don't marry an Igbo girl. Don't marry a Yoruba husband. Don't marry a Christian. Don't marry Muslim. And you find families more or less refusing to attend their son's wedding because he's married to a Christian or a Muslim or a Yoruba son. I think the country, the way we are going now, if we are not careful, that sense, that lack of oneness, of solidarity with our fellow human beings, no matter where they come from, may tear the country apart. There is so much hate speech going on now. And I think what we learned from what everybody has said about IBB today was that he was, if you want to use that word, detribalized. It was not that he did not have natal roots or natal cultural traits, but he saw what brings us all together as a human, and I think it's very, very important. The second point I think is important to emphasize, and this comes out clearly, I think again in various, is that intellectuals have an important role to play in transforming society. Despite the love-hate relationship that exists between intellectuals and policymakers everywhere, but that you cannot do without the power of the intellect to find out what the solution, what the problems are, what causes them, and what needs to be done to find a solution to that. I think we live in an anti-intellectual society, but I think IBB, above any other political leader in this country that I have studied, maybe to some extent, Obafemi Awolowo, the way he brought intellectuals around to formulate social policies in the West. I think IBB stands far much higher above the other political leaders we have had. And I think we can see that, we can see the movement away from that and the resurgence of anti-intellectualism in our society as a result of that. I think it's important that we go back to that tradition. The third point that I want to make is that let us realize that it is not easy to carry out bold programs of reform that are in the public interest. It is easy, there are social costs to it. And I think IBB suffered for that because of the social cost of those policies and the range of enemies that rose both within and outside the country that rose against those policies that he was trying to do. And we can still see that in terms of, the resistance to the upsurge of, in some very few areas of withdrawal from the public space by most of us today. The fourth point, I think, is the leadership style of Professor President Babangida. The broad consultative process, even within the military, in reaching public policies. There are many times where, when I was in the Electoral Commission, both under our and Humphrey, I attended meetings of the highest security in the country, and you could see the debate going on. The debate going on that you could hardly even see in the Senate of a university. And everybody was able to speak. There is no preconceived, arranged that you talk, and then you know whom you are going to call to talk in favor of the position you stand as a vice chancellor. But it was a broad-based discussion that was going on, and all centered around the public interest and what we need to do to protect the public interest. The last point I want to make goes back to my first point. We are passing through difficult times in this country. People are withdrawing. They are saying, look, we've given hope in the country. People are withdrawing. This is not the Nigeria we wanted. But I think the message that IBB's administration, the relevance of its message for us, was captured in that collection of essays that Sam referred to when he was speaking. Let us give our today for our children's tomorrow. Don't let us give up on it. We must speak out. We must speak out. People spoke out against IBB. They condemned these policies. They spoke out, and he also learned lessons from that. Let us not withdraw to ourselves, saying that there is nothing we can do, and hoping that God, the country is so religious today. That's why I was surprised that someone was talking of religion. We take risk because God's time will come. Let us wait for God's time. God will deliver us from Him. But we must deliver ourselves we must deliver ourselves on our own will. That is why it is important that for their tomorrow, we give our today, no matter at what cost. Thank you.
Thank you very much, moderator. I want to congratulate the octogenarians and septuagenarians. I know that there are a group of retired military officers called IBB boys. Now I know that there are also IBB civilian boys. Because what I have today is exactly what police. And girls. Look, there are IBB girls now, boys. But truly, I mean, in all honesty,
Okay.
he has got such a large heart that you can't fault him when it comes to kindness and empathy. I'm not aware of a single military officer who went to him and didn't get his request. Even if he hasn't got, IBB is one person who will borrow money and give to another person. He will go to that extent. And I think it's the personal touch in governance that has made him such a popular figure in this country. I'd like to congratulate the family and the children for this wonderful show of love to your dad and to your mom. Because you're not the only one who is kind to his children and kind to everybody. But to acknowledge it is another thing, and you have acknowledged it by bringing all of us together. I've not seen Larry Jr. for a very, very long time. And he hasn't changed at all. I've seen him now. So there are so many of us who have come together today as a part of this celebration. pray that the Almighty God will bless him and continue to give him long life. Thank you. Just before I drop the mic, Nigerians, we like to preach democracy, but we are dictators at heart. Since I have this mic now, I don't know when I will have it again. Briefly, I want to share one or two moments that I had with President Babangida. Don't ask me in what role I have known and related to him for the last 35 years. Don't ask me, but I will tell you. Now, I recall that when we founded the Guardian newspapers, I was in the founding team. The first few weeks, he had come into office, and we had this tradition of publishing unusual photographs at weekends. We nicely, very innocently, we published a photograph of his second son, Amin, was a little boy then, riding his bicycle on the lawns of, on the floors of the grounds of Badam barracks. He saw it. In a couple of hours, he called myself and a few of the leaders of the Guardian. And I was curious. And the message, after I compared notes with my colleagues, the message he had was, thank you very much for this photograph, but please leave the children out of it. You people focus on me, leave the children, they are not in office. And that sent a message across that early, that here was a man who wasn't going to place his family on the firing line, or wasn't going to make them co-presidents of the country. And I took that lesson. On another occasion, I was with him on a trip to a neighboring country. And when it was time to face the press, because I used to be a journalist, I don't know if I'm still one now, I took my seat among the journalists. And he looked up and saw me. And he was like, Chidi, what are you doing there? You're either on that side or you're on this side. I knew that he wanted me to change my seat. So I stood up and came to sit beside him. That was a message in loyalty. If you're loyal to him, you better stick where you belong. Don't go to the other side. On another occasion, people got worried, more worried than myself, that I wasn't occupying some fancy position. So I had gone to see him for a different reason. And he said, oh, by the way, somebody just left here now. And guess what they brought? I said, what is that? He said, they brought your CV. So I opened my eyes and said, you know, some people love you more than yourself. And then he said to me, I want you around me so many years after I've left office. And I'm happy to say today that 30 years after he stopped being president, there's one title that he never shared. He still regards me as a friend. So I want to congratulate Aisha and the rest of our siblings on this very courageous occasion. And I'm hoping that
but don't worry, man.
Institutionalize the IBB dialogue to become an annual event where you can have this kind of dialogue, have a lecture, and so on. Because the amount of work he has been put in nation building is not something that should be filtered away or to be forgotten. So once again, I want to thank everybody and the rest of us for honoring this.
That you can record to
Thank you.
You can go on.
Important milestone of turning 80. First of all, I want to say that General Babangida was born in 1941, and that meant that he became head of state at the age of 44 in 1985. And I want everybody to note that and keep that in view, that he was 44 years at the time he became head of state. First of all, I want to speak as the former co-marshal of the Federal Road Safety Commission, an agency that was founded by General Babangida. In the course of my work as the co-marshal of the FRSC, the World Bank, the United States, many countries have always wondered why, how did Nigeria get the vision to have an organization like the Federal Road Safety Commission? It was so important, and the countries considered it such a wonderful thing to do that FRSC Nigeria became the World Bank go-to place for other African countries to come up. So in Sierra Leone, the FRSC Nigeria trained the Sierra Leoneans to form their own road safety organization. In Uganda, they had to take the template of the FRSC to get their own road safety organization. And road safety has become such a global phenomenal issue that it was surprising to everybody how come Nigeria, as far back as 1988, had the foresight and the vision to start an organization of that scale and scope, and it has remained an important organ of Nigerian government, and also something that the world looks up to Nigeria to lead. While I was co-marshal, I was the president of the African Road Safety Organization, and also we were the best example of road safety organization used by the World Bank in getting other countries up to speed. Now, I'm currently in the US. As I was coming to the US, I walked through London Heathrow Airport. And as I was at London Heathrow, I saw the advert of GT Bank. That advert always makes me proud as a Nigerian whenever I see the advert of GT Bank. GT Bank was a bank founded because of the liberalization and deregulation principles of the IBB regime. And at the time GT Bank was founded, it was a 5 million naira bank. It was those banks that you needed just 5 million at that time, princely sum, but not much, not like the 25 billion of today to start a bank. And that moment of looking at GT Bank in London reminds me of the genius of General Babangida. The genius of General Babangida in deregulating that economy, in liberalizing it to allow for private sector to participate in the economy, shows you the forward thinking of General Babangida at 44, 45. That was his age at that time. Always remember that. Now, if you look at GT Bank today, GT Bank's gross earning for 2020 was about 455 billion naira. That 455 billion naira is bigger than the internally generated revenue of the top 10 states of Nigeria if you minus Lagos, Rivers, and FCT. So the top 7 states. And it's of course bigger than the bottom 20 states of Nigeria. Now, if you look at the budget of states in Nigeria, the gross earning of GT Bank is bigger than the budget of the 5 bottom states in Nigeria. So if you combine Anambra, Abia, Enugu together with Zamfara and Yobe, the gross earning of GTB is bigger than those bottom 5 states than their budget. And it is interesting that the assets of GT Bank today is 1.3 trillion, the assets of GT Bank. GT Bank has assets GT Bank has assets of almost 4 trillion, bigger, of course, than the total IGR of all the states in Nigeria, almost struggling with the budget of the federal government for their capital votes. So this shows you what can happen when you unlock an economy. Now, the crisis that is confronting Nigeria today, and because for me, I was a young lad in secondary school when President Babangida was in office. So the most important message for me today is, what lessons can I learn? While we revere with the good old days of his government, while we talk about his personal attributes, what is the lesson for us today? And the lesson for us today is that there is great similarity between what was happening in Nigeria in 1985 and when IBB took over and what is happening in Nigeria today. Of course, beyond the obvious similarity that the same person is in power, General Buhari was in power in 1984 and is now in power, is the more serious issue that the state was burdened by high running costs, the more serious issue that debt was at high and unsustainable levels. So we needed to negotiate with the World Bank, the Paris and London Club before we could budget. Tension was high in the land as draconian rules and all the efforts at, stemming the tide of public opinion at that time was creating serious tension in the country. And particularly, the government was at a crossroad. We didn't know what to do to move forward. We didn't know how to move forward in 1984. So Babangida did something that I wonder how a 45-year-old, 44-year-old soldier could have fathomed. I mean, he didn't go to Princeton, he wasn't an economist, but he figured it out. First of all, he restructured the country. The restructuring that we talk about Nigeria was first done under Babangida when he singularly handed over the assets of the federal government to the private sector and allowed the private sector to participate in the economy. So he reduced the government scope and span by allowing government to get out of business and regulate business, which is what gave rise to what we call GT Bank. So looking at the debt burden, looking at the crisis of balance of payment, looking at the fact that we had no more resources, he did what was today a very revolutionary step of allowing the government to shed of his own powers. I mean, those days government could appoint all the chief executives and appoint chairman of boards of parastatals, but he willingly let go of that. He deregulated and liberalized the economy. We had a national conversation about our future as a country. So we had the Cookie Committee, which went around the country and listened to Nigerians and came up with the idea of what Nigerians wanted. He opened up the media space. I mean, I heard Dr. Chidi Ambuta talk about the Guardian of today. We went as far as the unleashing of papers like Vintage People, Prime People. It was days when Nigerians were happy. We even had the Nigerian Music Awards, which used to happen and became a regular event in the Lagos social scene. So everybody that was somebody was at the Nigerian Music Awards. So the IBB period led us to the Nigeria we know today. But more importantly to me, he renewed the idea of Nigeria. He renewed the idea that Nigerians can take control of the economy, manage that economy, and run that economy. He unlocked our potentials as a people. He gave us the possibility to begin to see that new Nigeria that began to emerge out of all his decisions. So while he made those decisions, of course, like every human being, he didn't realize the import of what he has done in being able to let Nigerians realize their potentials. It became impossible for anybody to control Nigerians. So whether it was Nigerians fighting the various regimes, the Abacha regime, the democratic process, the third term, it was that start of the Babangida regime in allowing Nigerians to take charge of their own destiny that gave us the strength we have today as a nation and the vibrant opposition, the vibrant voice that the Nigerian media and the civil society have today in Nigeria. So today, I think that what we need to do is that we need to look back at things that have worked for us and see how we can do them again. The country needs to restructure. And when I use restructure, not just the political restructuring, but I mean that the federal government, looking at their budget, looking at the inability to pay their wage bills, looking at inability to service the debt that is rising, it is time for the government to reduce the scope and the span of the federal bureaucracy. Just like Babangida handed over to the private sector, it is time for the federal government to withdraw from some of the activities of the federal government, especially those in the concurrent list, to allow those things to go back to the states. It will not weaken the federal government, it will strengthen it. Because what will happen is that the federal government will have the scope and span to now intervene in the critical parts of our economy. So in education, in the health sector, in security management, there is an urgent need for the federal government to restructure, to willingly let go of those powers, to stop controlling those things that he needed at some point to control to help us in building a nation. Secondly, I think we need to renew the idea of Nigeria. At no time in the history of Nigeria, in the history that I've lived in the period I've lived in Nigeria, at no time have the question of Nigerian been so strong, have the tension between us as a people been so intense, have the hate and the disconnect between the people and the state. I have never seen it this much in Nigeria. So this is the time again we need to renew the idea of Nigeria. We need to borrow a leaf from what General Babangida did by asking Nigerians, what do you want? We do not need to convene any new conference. We've had conferences, we've spoken. We need to get people like the Cookie Commission to go out again, collect all these ideas, allow Nigerians to ventilate and be able to say, these are the minimum the government can do now to reduce the tension in the land. So we need a government that will renew the idea of Nigeria. Renewing the idea of Nigeria is so critical because two Nigerias have also emerged in the course of our activities as a nation. Today we have that Nigeria I refer to as Niger, that space where Nigerian young people are in the movie industry, in the music industry, that space where our technology companies like Flutterwave, Kobo 360, our Paystacks are operating, that space where the global financial power is investing money in Nigerian companies, circumventing the Nigerian state and going straight to the Nigerian people. That Niger space is the space where Nigerians have disconnected from Nigeria and they have now migrated out to Canada and to the US. That's the first option. If they fail in that option, they stay in Nigeria physically, but they live in the global community. That space is a space where merit is driving it. That space is a space where the people are pushing despite the obstacles of the government. Nigeria as a state is becoming moribund, is becoming an obstacle to the growth of realizing our personal potentials. And I think there is need to take that space of Nigeria, which General Babangida unlocked when he started the private sector deregulations in the 1980s. That space that has become vibrant in Nigeria today. We need to take the lessons of that state and infuse it to Nigeria. What that means is that we need to find a new leadership that is like the Babangida leadership. That leadership for me is a leadership that has the vigor of youth, the idealism of the young, which General Babangida had, in understanding the advice he received from the Professor Ojetunji Ayebades of this world, Iken and Zimiros, Sam Oyowaires, the Adele Ajinaidus, the young officers that used to clog around him. So if you look at the metrics of people around Babangida, you could see that this was youthful idealism at work. This was the energy of youth. This was the hope of a new nation. This was the ability to harness our energies as a people and drive towards a new destination. They were not held back by the prejudices of yesterday. Our leadership in Nigeria today has to be a new leadership anchored on the idealism of the young people who are looking at the space Niger and trying to infuse that spirit into Nigeria. So that transition, that reimagining of Nigeria will require to be done urgently now that our elder statesmen are around, so that we can learn from the benefits of their experience without the burden of their cynicism. We can learn from the mistakes of their past without being held hostage by their prejudices. What we need in Nigeria today is to re-identify the idea of Nigeria, to renew the idea of Nigeria. And I hope that President Babangida at 80 serves as a fulcrum. This dialogue, the Babangida, the IBB legacy, should continue to offer us opportunity for us to be able to bring out that new Nigeria, for us to give birth to that idea that allowed Nigeria to flourish. If you remember very well, since after the period of General Babangida, we have not had any new event that excites Nigerians. We haven't been able to do things like MAMSA, which told us, like everybody talked about Professor Jerry Ghana, if you are a chief, if you are a Baba, Bab well. If you are a driver, drive well. We haven't even had a song again that captures our imagination. Me, I love my country. I like the land and people. Everything is there for Nigeria. Make we join hands to make Nigeria better. These were the songs that evoked our feelings as a nation. This is what I grew up as a 14-year-old listening to. I believe, these are the things that today we have no more. We are breaking the ties that bind us as a nation. So if we like the land and the people, I think the time has come to learn from the experiences of the past, to look at what has worked and to reimagine the idea of Nigeria. The greatest lesson for me, listening to all these people here today, listening to the variety of opinion about the man IBB, about the governance, about the vision, listening to the professors who are thinking, I think we need to go back to that golden era when those who know lead those towards a new promised land. I wish General Babangida a happy birthday. I wish him longer life. My father is 95 this year, so I hope he will live longer than him. I wish him also to be able to lend his voice, to do what Professor Oyewari has been asking him to do, to tell his own story, so that when we look back, we can say, this is how IBB saw it, and he did it his way. We may not agree with his way, but that is a way of doing things. And that, for me, remains the hope that I have, that this Nigeria, with all its challenges, will give birth to Nigeria, a land of hope, a land of opportunities, a land that we can make and be proud as a Black nation in the world. Thank you very much.